Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. God our Father, we thank you for our time together this evening. Thank you for all the ways that you have blessed us, especially by opening our minds and our hearts to the goodness, the truth, and the love that is your truth. It came to earth in the person of your Son, Christ. So please bless our discussion this evening and our thoughts, that they may be directed toward you and toward all that is waiting for us in time. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, Son, and Spirit. Amen. Okay, so true to my form in the past, we are not going to make any progress tonight in the book. We are going to kind of backtrack over themes from the last class. I don't know, did we do chapter 8 last time? I can't remember if we started it or not, but it has a lot to do with chapter 8. So, because what's happening there, so it's kind of 7 and 8, all right? So, these two, did we do a little bit of 8?
I think we did the whole of 8.
We did the whole of 8. Okay, that's great. So it's kind of what we did last time, but this kind of image has been coming to my mind about the book of Revelation, and I decided to go with it because the more I thought about it, it even provided some more truth, and it's kind of the basis for tonight's class. So what you see here, Father Tim's opening thought. All rise. The book of Revelation reminds me of one of those days, not like today, we don't have that outside, where the contrasts of light and dark are both stark and stunning. Days where there are big, puffy clouds, especially where there are dark, ominous clouds. When there are also patches of sunlight that shine brilliantly through the clouds with rays that remind you of heaven coming down to earth. Can you picture such days? I think we had some a couple days ago. There was one not too long ago. It wasn't, maybe the clouds weren't that dark, that ominous. Easy for me to say. So do you see what I'm doing here? First of all, just stay with the weather. It's not like today. Today, pretty much all we see is light, brightness, clarity. The only contrasts might be the contrast between green and blue. So this is now we're in a James Taylor song. Carolina on my mind. Colors and green and blue, right? I can't remember the exact line, but it's a reference to that. So there aren't these stark contrasts. And this day is also in contrast, or something similar to this day now would be days of the not so wonderful days of Cleveland in winter, where it is just these low, overhanging clouds, and it's what we call gray. No contrast there, less than today when it's bright. It's just gray. It's cloudy, there's not much light, it's kind of dark, it's shadowy, it's not wonderful, definitely more depressing than today is. But the book of Revelation reminds me of days that are not like today, or the dark or the gray days. It's those other days where there are clouds, and like I said, they could be really dark. And that's an important thing, because you see what I'm comparing here? So I'm comparing darkness of the heavy, dark stuff that's in the book of Revelation. Plagues and persecution and all the kinds of things that are in there, the dark things that are talked about. And yet it's only on those days where the sunlight comes shining through. And like I said, I don't know what's your favorite way of thinking about, right? You're driving along and it's got, you need those certain kind of clouds for the sunlight to be coming through in such a way that you're going like, wow, this feels like a little bit of heaven or something coming down to earth. All right, so there's my meditation. Please chime in here. Make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, Teresa and I call those miracles. So whenever we see them, we say,
Yeah, so maybe that's my question. What do you think of when you see those, the rays coming through?
Mm-hmm.
What do you call them? What do you say?
Miracles.
Miracles,
Call them.
yeah.
There's a
You
miracle.
call them miracles?
Yeah.
Miracles.
Oh, our kids used to say, what is that? I said, that's a miracle happening.
That's a miracle. Anybody else have a favorite image or? Yes,
It's
from the
my-
camera lady. Behind the camera. Please turn the camera around so that everyone is looking right at you.
I have to focus on you.
No,
It's my mother.
it's your mother.
In heaven.
Okay. Your mother looking down at you.
Yes.
I actually heard one recently, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a child looking at those and saying, that's how angels come to earth. Oh, almost like, yeah, I think like the rays were kind of like a slide. You know, like the angels are just kind of sliding down to earth on those rays. Okay, so you see, yes, Cindy.
Yeah, actually, now that you said that, I've seen a few pictures here and there where you see a line of people and you see the ray coming down. They're going up.
They're on like a stairway to heaven.
it's
Yeah.
going up.
Actually, it's more of an escalator, huh? So
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, it's the escalator, not just, you don't see the steps, but yeah, something like that. Right. Okay, so do you see why I'm saying that the book of Revelation is like that? Because it's got those dark, ominous clouds, foreboding is the feeling, but yet at the same time, through that is shining these things that are like these moments. So like I said, my first intuition was about, some weeks ago, I was just noticing, and have you noticed how we kind of go like back and forth between the dark, ominous stuff and now have salvation and power come, the victor, all the victorious, Christ has won the victory language of Revelation goes back and forth between those two. So in other words, so we titled this here, Honing the Distinction. So there's a lot of distinctions I want to make tonight, where we want to make the distinctions more clear. And like I said, my main basic point so far is simply that today is a day that does not hone the distinction as clearly because we can't see the dark as clearly today. Right? Because it's just bright. It's bright and beautiful and bold and clear and fresh. And then on those gray days, it's dark, but you definitely do not pick up any light or any, it's beautiful and it's hopeful. It's like, all right, when's this going to end? Can't wait for spring. Okay, so Revelation is not like those two. It's like the other one where you've got both going on. And the fact that both are going on, you see both more clearly. So that's the honing, the distinction. You can see the difference between the dark and the light. And they're both allowed to exist together. And that's good. It's helpful, as we'll see, hopefully. Okay. So, chapter 7 and 8, kind of what we saw last time. So one of the references in chapter 7 before the 144,000, okay, it was called the sealing of the elect. Okay, so I think it was like, those who had the mark on their foreheads. Actually got the page right here. I saw another angel came up from the east holding the seal of the living God. He cried out at the top of his voice to the four angels who were given power to ravage the land and the sea. Okay, here's the one that's got the power to do the dark stuff. The message is, do no harm to the land or the sea or the trees until we imprint the seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Okay, so this imprinting of the seal, now there is this separation. All right, so this is part of this theme now, honing the distinction between those who have the seal on their foreheads and those who don't. So don't start messing with things until we make it clear who's who. Okay? So, as the quote says here, this connects with what took place in the plagues in Egypt. And we're going to actually read them tonight. I think it would be really, as I read them, I say, we got to read this. So we see the subtleties of the back and forth that's going on over the course of the 10 plagues. It's not just this kind of story of, okay, it was the first plague, Pharaoh said, I don't care. Then he did a second plague, Pharaoh said, I don't care. There's some subtleties that are going back and forth that would really help us, I think, if we could appreciate that. The immunity of the Israelites to the plagues. So things that hit Egypt, they did not affect the Hebrews. Immunity, okay? One of our favorite words now in COVID, right? We all know immunity. So the Israelites had herd immunity to the plagues, to the virus that was coming down. We'll see. Okay? And the plagues of the trumpets in chapter 8, they're modeled on the plagues in Egypt. So for these reasons, I thought it'd be worthwhile, we're going to read what happened in the plagues.
I don't think we did start chapter 8 now.
Oh, you're backtracking now. Okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem. It's just it's okay. It's all in the same theme here of plagues that are talked about in the book of Revelation. They're similar to plagues that were in Egypt. And the basic teaching for tonight is about this distinction between God's chosen people and everyone else in the world. So that's why I call this like honing the distinction, making more clear the difference between the dark and the light. Okay, the children of the light, okay, all that kind of thing. Just like I said, with that day it makes the contrasts more clear. Whereas those other days, the contrast, the difference between the two is not as clear. All right? Right? Okay. Just one more quote here from the book. The plagues were not a punishment of Pharaoh. They were designed to procure the liberation of God's people. So Moses says, let my people go. Just as the appeal to Pharaoh was vain, so John believes God will continue to encounter human intransigence, meaning in our world, in the world of 90 AD, right after Christ, there is going to be this human will that is going to fight against God and what God is doing on earth and God's people. It's all very, it's a similar kind of thing going on. Okay? So, let's read the story of the place. So if you have a Bible, you can turn to the book of Exodus. So, second book of the Bible. So Genesis ends with the death of Jacob. Joseph dies. Okay, so Joseph, the story, he becomes second in command in Egypt, and then the Hebrew, Joseph's brothers and family, the descendants of Abraham, they have a kind of an honored place because Joseph was the hero. He was the one who had the dream to store all the grain up. They continued to feed Egypt. They fed the world, so to speak, with the grain that they had stored up. So all this is very good. The very first chapter in Exodus. Then a new king came who knew nothing of Joseph. So in other words, you get the feeling they're in trouble. Political fortunes have changed. We used to have some kings, some pharaohs who honored, respected what Joseph had done, and that we were Hebrews, and that we meant the Egyptians no harm, and we were living peaceably. Then somebody came who didn't care about that history, that story. And now he felt free to look at those people and go, like, they're foreigners, and why don't we just use them? Instead of just letting them live here like the rest of us. So now they're in trouble. So, of course, this is the famous Pharaoh, Yul Brenner, the Ten Commandments. That's a great character. So, just wanted to point to one line before we get to the plagues. It's a key line. I put it down here. Exodus chapter 5, verse 2. So, Moses had just one of his initial meetings with Pharaoh, saying, let my people go. You don't have to go to that. I'm just going to quote it for you. He goes to Pharaoh, let my people go. Pharaoh says, who is the Lord that I should heed his plea to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and even if I did, I would not let Israel go. So this is a very important kind of like theme. I do not know the Lord. So think of this as applying not just to Pharaoh in whatever year this would have been, 1200 BC, possibly, somewhere around there, 1200, 1800, I think, 1200 years before Christ. Think of this as applying not simply to that king Pharaoh. Think of it as applying to any human being, any political power of any age. I do not know the God that you're talking about. Don't know him. I don't care about him. I don't respect him, and I certainly don't fear him. Okay, it's a kind of a, because you see what it's setting up then. Once again, the distinction is being honed now. Okay, between, and at that point, the Hebrews, the Jewish people, they didn't necessarily know God that well either. All right, they're, just some generations, I don't know, I guess it would have been quite a few hundred years, but from Abraham, the descendants, so I don't know that they knew God necessarily that well, except maybe by the stories of, okay, this is our great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Abraham, and there's these stories about called him, and maybe they would have had that story. Did they keep telling the story? That's a good question. I really don't know the answer to that. Did they keep telling the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph hundreds of years after? Or was it kind of like, like what we're going through in our country right now, the story of the American Revolution, the story of separation from England, the story of the Declaration of Independence, and as you probably know, how much of that is really being taught in public school? We have this really incredible story, and then some new kings came to rule the educational system in America, who seemed to forget about all that, or had a different way of telling the story. And this is what happens when you stop telling the story. So it's probably some similar things going on, but in any case, now Moses, from the call, goes to Pharaoh and is making a statement. Here's what God says. And Pharaoh says, I don't know this guy. All right, so now we got a battle that is forming, and since Pharaoh will not listen or respect, so things happen, the throwing down of the staff to become a snake and all this, and Pharaoh just goes, well, my magicians can do that too, so it's got to get to the point where I gotta say I have to get your attention. I need to, so God is like trying to earn some street cred, some respect here from Pharaoh, because Pharaoh does not know or respect God. And as I said before, he's judging the power of Moses' God by the situation of his people and their slaves. So he's going like, this God is weak. It's nothing compared to what I am and my gods are. Look at, the glory of Egypt. They fed the world, all of this civilization, So it was like a no-brainer. Who's more powerful? Who should I listen to? And, okay. All right. So, let's go chapter 7. So how would you like to do this? Should we take turns reading it? Can everybody read loud enough so that it'll be heard at home? If people are listening, or should I just read it, or what would you guys like to do?
Yeah.
You read some.
All right. Who are the big mouths in the group? All right. With the mask. All right. Big mouth number 1, Mike. Yeah. Very good. Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. And the Lord said to Moses, See, I make you as God to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and Aaron your brother shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth my hosts, my people, the sons of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I stretch forth my hand upon Egypt and bring out the people of Israel from among them. And Moses...
Okay, let's just stop there.
Okay.
Anything you see off the bat there?
Well, it's interesting that the Lord says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart.
Okay, so we talked about that a couple classes ago. Do you remember what I said? Ways to think about that. So we can't think about it in terms that Pharaoh had no free will. Okay, he did not simply do this to Pharaoh. Pharaoh was part of this. It was simply that God was presenting himself as a force to be reckoned with to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh was the most powerful thing, and he was not used to losing, and was not ready to lose. And so whatever God did, because Pharaoh couldn't match it, it was just going to, strengthen his resolve to not give in. The more you fight against me, the more I'm going to fight against you. So God made Pharaoh's heart hard by frustrating him. There's a good word. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. You're frustrating me. You're really starting to tick me off. And the more you do it, the more I am going to fight it. So the more God continued to present things that were, distasteful, that's a nice word, to Pharaoh in Egypt, the more Pharaoh was determined. Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, so God's, the purpose is to get the people free. He didn't necessarily just want to go in there, and I asked the question later on, he didn't want to go in there with the big artillery right off the bat. Okay, so down a little bit on my page there, he said God always had the heavy artillery at hand to use to procure the liberation of the people. Why did God not just use it right away? So let's maybe just start with that question, because we know he didn't. We know there were 10 plagues. God could have gone in there and just, what's it called? The nuclear option, right? He could have gone nuke right away. Could have done something that would have just completely blown him out of the water, and didn't do that. Why do you think God did not do that?
I think that he wanted to let Pharaoh know how powerful he was and who he was. And by Pharaoh, the extension to all the people of Egypt would know that the Israelites had a really powerful God.
Right? And to give them a chance, maybe even better. Yes, Matt?
No, I was just going to say, I think if we did one big thing, and let's say it was done and over with,
Right.
people forget about stuff that is a shorter duration of time.
Good. Good. That's
So
a good
people would
point.
be like, well, he that was done with mirrors and whatever, magicians, but to continually,
Right,
it reminds me a little bit of Job,
good.
where, things just kept coming at him.
Mhm.
And you remember things differently over
That's
that
good.
period of time.
Thank you, that's a great point. I wasn't thinking of that. The old saying is, repetition is the mother of learning. And if you repeat things, it really helps people to learn them. And saying things over and over again really helps people's comprehension.
Feeling smarter already.
And being redundant is good, it's a good quality in a teacher.
Yeah.
And how long can I keep this going?
But I mean, it is like when you're teaching
Yeah.
children
Correct,
to
correct.
spell, and you do
Correct.
that same word over and over and
Correct.
over again.
Correct. So so what we're going to see is the same lesson getting repeated in a little bit different form each time. And at the same time, you're going to see this crazy resistance, this obduracy, this stubbornness, this hard-heartedness of Pharaoh that's going to take a different form. And yeah, but it's like, yes, God wanted them to know, to learn.
You can't talk away multiple things. I mean, you can't make excuses for it when it keeps coming at you like that.
Mhm.
So.
Good. Okay. Thank you. You want to continue, Mike?
Sure. And Moses and Aaron did so. They did as the Lord commanded them. Now Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, prove yourselves by working a miracle, then you shall say to Aaron, take your rod and cast it down before Pharaoh, that it may become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did as the Lord commanded. Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh summoned the wise men and the sorcerers, and they also, the magicians of Egypt, did the same by their secret arts. For every man cast down his rod, and they become serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Still, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said.
Okay. We're not even in the plagues yet. We're just kind of like getting to know you here, and Moses' serpent swallows theirs. That was actually in the movie. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah. Didn't make an effect. So if you're Pharaoh, you gotta find a way to explain things. And isn't that kind of what goes on in our world when miracles are brought up? We're gonna find a scientific explanation for them, so that we can explain it away. Right? And some things there are scientific explanations for. But then there are other things that aren't, that truly are acts of God. But if you don't know God, if you don't acknowledge that there is a God who's working, you've got to find some other explanation.
Yeah. Because otherwise your worldview
Thank you.
is wrong.
And
That stubborn miracle
yes,
is a contradiction to what you believe in.
yes. Thank you. Thank you for bringing up your worldview is wrong. So that's a thanks for saying that, Mike, because that is a really good insight into why Pharaoh is going to fight so hard. Because what's being talked about here is everything that his whole life is based on. It's getting right at the foundation. So there's an old saying, and it fits so perfectly here. Have you heard this? Denial is more than a river. You never heard that?
I heard that.
You'll remember it. Do I need to repeat it so you can learn it? Denial is more than a river. Because the minute you're getting at somebody's cherished foundation worldview, if you threaten that, what are you going to get in response?
Stubbornness and resistance.
You're
You're
gonna
gonna fight.
You know.
what's that?
You're gonna fight.
You're gonna get anger. This is everything my life is based on. So just so all this is like, it's helpful, just helpful to kind of understand why we're seeing what we're seeing and why we're going to see what we're going to see in Pharaoh. Because it's just like you can see, for all these reasons, it makes no sense. Like, you know, why should these slave people be powerful and why should I listen to them? And so let's just keep going. So, all right, not going to listen. First plague, water turned to blood. Would you like to read that? Do we have any nurses here to read the water turned to blood? Yes.
I guess I'm loudmouth number 2.
You're loud enough there too. Okay, very good. Very good.
Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh is obdurate in refusing to let the people go. Tomorrow morning, when he sets out for the water, go and present yourself by the riverbank, holding in your hand the staff that turned into a serpent. Say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you with the message, let my people go to worship me in the desert. But as yet you have not listened. The Lord now says, this is how you shall know that I am the Lord. I will strike the water of the river with the staff I hold, and it shall be changed into blood. The fish in the river shall die, and the river itself shall become so polluted that the Egyptians will be unable to drink its water. The Lord then said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, their streams and canals and pools, all their supplies of water, that they may become blood. Throughout the land of Egypt there shall be blood, even in the wooden pails and stone jars. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord had commanded. Aaron raised his staff and struck the waters of the river in full view of Pharaoh and his servants, and all the water of the river was changed into blood. The fish in the river died, and the river itself became so polluted that the Egyptians could not drink its water. There was blood throughout the land of Egypt, but the Egyptian magicians did the same by their magic art. So Pharaoh remained obstinate and would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had foretold. He turned away and went into his house, with no concern even for this. All the Egyptians had to dig in the neighborhood of the river for drinking water, since they could not drink the river water.
Okay, what do you think?
This is a rabbit hole, but where are the magicians getting their power? I mean, were they demonic?
Yeah, so I don't know how they could do something like that, or maybe they could do something close to that, but it was enough for Pharaoh to say, you're not impressing me. My magicians can do the same thing. And another key is they weren't ready to die of thirst. They were able to go and dig somewhere and get some water they could drink. So in other words, all right, this is what we call a major inconvenience. All the water turned to blood, but we still got a little bit over here. Oh, we're okay. So then, turned away, no concern for any of this. He's not impressed, even though it's pretty impressive. Okay, so we got different words for stubbornness, obdurate, obstinate, stubborn, hard-hearted. See how many we can get. They're all kind of talking about the same thing. Okay.
Bullheaded.
Pardon?
Bullheaded.
Bullheaded. Yes. Testadura in Italian. Okay. Second plague, the frogs. Anybody like to read that, Cindy?
7 days passed after the Lord had struck the river. Then the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him, thus says the Lord, let my people go to worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I warn you, I will send a plague of frogs all over your territory. The river will teem with frogs, They will come up into your palace and into your bedroom and onto your bed, into the houses of your servants too, and your subjects even into your ovens and your kneading bowls. The frogs will swarm all over you and your subjects and your servant. Can we keep going?
Sure.
The Lord then said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand and your staff over the streams and canals and pools to make frogs overrun the land of Egypt. Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same by their magic arts. They too made frogs overrun the land of Egypt.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. Okay, so you see how each time Pharaoh was given a chance by way of a warning. Okay, he's given a chance to listen. He's a chance to avoid any of this bad thing, any of these bad things happening. So there's that, stubbornness, like, I'm not going to listen to you. So then, all right, am I going to get your attention with this one? And, all right, these magicians can do the same thing. Now we've got a new element introduced. The next words are?
Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, pray the Lord to remove the frogs from me and my subjects, and I will let the people go to offer sacrifice to the Lord. Moses answered Pharaoh, do me the favor of appointing the time when I am to pray for you and your servants and your subjects, that the frogs may be taken away from you and your houses and your house, and be left alone in the river. Tomorrow, said Pharaoh. Then Moses replied, it shall be as you have said, so that you may learn that there is none like the Lord our God. The frogs shall leave you and your houses, your servants and your subjects, only in the river shall they be left. After Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh's presence, Moses implored the Lord to fulfill the promise he had made to Pharaoh about the frogs. And the Lord did as Moses had asked. The frogs in the houses and courtyards and fields died off. Heaps and heaps of them were gathered up, and there was a stench in the land. But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite, he became obdurate and would not listen to them, just as the Lord had foretold.
Okay, what do you think of this? Now,
This guy's patient, because I'd be put out with the first one. I wouldn't even want a second one, and now he's already gone through two. These people must be really patient. I'm put out reading it.
So the people, who knows what the people would have said? This is all
Let's choose him.
Pharaoh, yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, how did they? I don't know. As long as Pharaoh said, I don't know. Yeah, what do people?
My father said the Nile.
Right.
The Nile. So the river isn't just some river, it's one of the biggest rivers in the world.
Right.
The Nile.
It's the great. It is Egypt. That's the old
Right.
saying. Egypt is the Nile. So yeah. So the first one struck right at the thing that is their lifeblood. But you see the new element that got introduced here with this plague?
Pharaoh had Moses reverse it.
He asked him to pray to God for now. All of a sudden now, okay, we have some progress. We have a breakthrough in negotiations. A little bit of give from the other side. And the give was in the form of a request, which Moses was happy to answer. Okay, because if he answers it, then that will also show God's power. But Pharaoh had to ask for it. Okay? It's a very beautiful moment that, of course, then gets lost because respite. We got a break. And we're not dealing with them right now, so we're good. That whole thing about, we'll forget about a disaster maybe the minute things change.
I didn't take it that way. Maybe it's my cynical side a little bit, but I took it that he was kind of. I just
He was
felt
just
like
being
Pharaoh was
clever.
yes, like I'm smarter than you. I
Right.
need you to reverse this by asking.
No, very likely. No, very likely. Yeah, no, it's very likely that was going on. Like he's just playing them.
Right.
Right. So, I'm not saying that he was sincere with that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that, that he was. It's very possible he's just a politician. Right?
Yeah.
What's most politically expedient here? I will use what I can to get the end that I need.
When I read that, I thought, liar, liar, pants on fire. That's what I thought.
Liar, liar. Liar, liar, your river's on fire.
Well, I find it interesting that Moses didn't ask the Lord, or didn't tell Pharaoh that he would completely remove the frogs, because they would still remain in the Nile.
Mm-hmm.
Just everywhere else, he would remove them. Like he was hedging his bets. Hedging his bets.
Yeah, well, actually, he took Pharaoh at his word, because Pharaoh said, "Pray the Lord to remove frogs from me and my subjects." So he did. He took them away from the people, but they were still in the rivers.
Yeah,
So he kind of did kind of exactly what he asked,
right.
so to speak. Yeah, he could have done more, but okay. All right. The gnats. Anybody want to read about the gnats? It's a quick one. Bill.
Thereupon the Lord spoke to Moses, "Speak to Aaron, stretch out your staff, and strike the dust of the earth, and it will turn into gnats throughout the land of Egypt." They did so. Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth, and gnats came upon human being and beast alike. All the dust of the earth turned into gnats throughout the land of Egypt. Though the magicians did the same thing to produce gnats by their magic arts, they could not do so. The gnats were on human being and beast alike. And the magician said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." Yet Pharaoh hardened his heart and would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said.
Okay, so if you recall, our theme for tonight is owning the distinction. Remember how we were talking before about the distinction between God's people and the Egyptians? So far, actually, that distinction has not been clear. In other words, this is kind of like one of the gray days or something where everybody it's not differentiated. It sounds like everybody was the Israelites, Hebrews, and the Egyptians were dealing with the same thing. All right? Movement in number 2, Pharaoh asks Moses to pray. Movement in number 3, what's the new thing introduced here that we didn't have before?
The magicians couldn't do
The
it.
magicians couldn't match it. All right? Now, this is another distinction. There is more clarity between God's power and the power of the magicians. See that? It's important. Okay? And it didn't get Pharaoh's attention enough to let them go into the desert and pray. It did get the magicians' attention enough to say, "This is the finger of God." Does anybody remember how we did our class on biblical reminiscence? Does anybody remember Jesus using that phrase? Excuse me, the finger of God. It was the aha moment. It was when the Pharisees were saying, "You cast out demons because you're the captain of the demons." And then his defense to them was, if Satan cast out Satan, how can his house stand? But if I do it, if it is the finger of God, then the kingdom of God is upon you, something like that. But he uses that phrase. So finger here, one of the things it could mean is kind of like all God has to do is just go like this. It's kind of like a way of talking about how powerful God is. I think the Greeks had something like this. They call it like the nod of Zeus or something like that. It would just be like, that's all it took for something to happen. Just a little nod, for the finger of God. But, like I said, so here's a change. Here's separation, okay? This is also part of the word judgment. Remember how I talked about what the word judgment means? It's a separation where, kind of like we talked before about clarity. It's clearer at certain points, what is the dark and what is the light? And that is happening now. It's clearer, more clear who really has the power. Because up to this point, it was like a horse race and they're kind of going neck and neck, you know. Moses and Aaron and the Egyptian magicians, they're coming down, you know, around the first turn and they're running neck and neck. All of a sudden now we got some separation. Now God's power is becoming more clear and the magicians are saying, we can't compete here. No idea what's going on. This, and they're going, this is God. Of course, so think about that. Now think about your Pharaoh. If you were Pharaoh, now your go-to guys are telling you, this is God. What are you going to say?
He's alone now. He's standing alone now. You think he'd kind of get a little nervous, maybe think, uh-oh.
Right.
He doesn't have an entourage anymore.
Pharaoh remained obstinate, would not listen to them. Okay, interesting. Maybe it's talking about, because now we have some division, good, healthy division within the ranks of the Egyptians, Pharaoh, the magicians. Now they're having a disagreement. He would not listen to them. So it sounds like he's talking about magicians. They're saying it's the finger of God. And he's going like, no, it isn't. Next. From gnats to flies. Who would like to do flies? Okay, good.
Again, the Lord said to Moses, early tomorrow morning, present yourself to Pharaoh when he goes forth to the water, and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go to worship you. If you will not let my people go, I warn you, I will loose swarms of flies upon you and your servants and your subjects and your homes. The houses of the Egyptians and the very ground on which they stand shall be filled with swarms of flies. But on that day I will make an exception of the land of Goshen. There shall be no flies where my people dwell, that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. I will make the distinction between my people and your people. The sign shall take place tomorrow. This the Lord did. 6 swarms of flies entered the house of the Pharaoh and the houses of the servants throughout Egypt. The land was infested with flies. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses, Aaron, and said to them, go and offer sacrifice to your God in this land. And Moses replied, it is not right to do so, for the sacrifices we offer to the Lord our God are an abomination in the Egyptians. If before their very eyes we offer sacrifices which are no abomination to them, will not the Egyptians stone us? We must go a 3 days journey into the desert to offer sacrifice to the Lord. Our God, as he commanded us, well then, said Pharaoh, I will let you go to offer a sacrifice to the Lord your God in the desert, provided that you do not go too far away and that you may pray for me. Moses answered, as soon as I leave your presence, I'll pray to the Lord that the flies may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh and his servants and his subjects. Pharaoh, however, must not play false again by refusing to let the people go to offer sacrifice to the Lord. When Moses left Pharaoh's presence, he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses and asked, he removed the flies from Pharaoh and his servants and subjects. Not one remained, but once more Pharaoh became obdurate and would not let the people go.
Okay. So new thing introduced here.
Pharaoh's asking for prayer.
That's not new, but it's the second time he's asking for prayer, correct? So, okay, he's learning, but Moses then says, don't play false. Okay, you pretended last time and you didn't really mean it. But the big thing in this one is,
He raised it from pray for me to go offer sacrifices.
But don't go too far.
but don't go too far.
Right. You can go out to there, but don't go too far.
Don't go too far. Well, that was Moses' request. He was ready to let them go. I think, let's see. Go offer. he said, go and offer sacrifice to your God in this land. So now they're negotiating about where the sacrifice will be offered. Moses said, we can't do it here. He says, all right, yeah, Egyptians don't like this. So you can leave, but don't go too far. But it sounds like they never left because he prayed, did, and then Pharaoh became object. Okay, but what's the new thing is?
Moses tells Pharaoh, I just read it, wait, I will make this distinction between or I don't know who's saying this.
Yeah.
I will make the distinction between my people and your people.
There you go.
This sign shall take place tomorrow. So even though I think we said that the plagues did not affect the Israelites, it was never brought up until this one.
Correct.
So I don't know if Pharaoh didn't know, maybe, I don't know. But anyway.
Right, so this is the new thing. Now, once again, more separation is taking place. Now, only Egyptians are going to be affected by the plague. God's people were not affected by it. Okay? So that's the big difference here. Okay, I'll read the fifth one, fifth. Then the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him, thus says the Lord, the God of Hebrews, let my people go to worship me. If you refuse to let them go and persist in holding them, I warn you, the Lord will afflict all your livestock in the field, your horses, asses, camels, herds, and flocks with a very severe pestilence. But the Lord will distinguish between the livestock of Israel and that of Egypt, so that none belonging to the Israelites will die. And setting a definite time, the Lord added, tomorrow the Lord shall do this in the land. And on the next day the Lord did so. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but not one beast belonging to the Israelites. But though Pharaoh's messengers informed him that not even one beast belonging to the Israelites had died, he still remained obdurate, would not let the people go. Okay, so this time it sounds like, I don't know, I warned you, it sounded like he didn't really give Pharaoh a chance. Just he said, this is going to happen. And then the same thing, the distinction is made. The messengers are starting to get the message, like this God is really powerful and he favors his people and not us. But he goes on. Any other thoughts?
Seems like it's showing that Moses is getting the upper hand now.
Correct. It's got to kind of like keep moving in that direction.
I wonder if Pharaoh was thinking, if he capitulates, then he wouldn't be the most powerful person anymore. So what would happen to him as the ruler?
Right. So what was he? Right. Losing face, losing. Was this about how much of this was related to the fact that they were slave labor, and this was all this free, labor that they had, and just abusing these people, and just it was economically very beneficial. That could be part of it. I don't know we don't know what his thinking was, but some of it certainly had to do with the fact that he was so powerful and he wasn't used to anybody telling him what to do. Yeah.
Right, he's got to be the most powerful person in his mind. No one on earth is more powerful than him.
Right.
Because he doesn't know about maybe Chinese rulers or other empires around the world. Only in this place, he is the most powerful person.
Right. Okay, sixth plague, the boils. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, take a double handful of soot from a furnace, and in the presence of Pharaoh let Moses scatter it toward the sky. It will then turn into fine dust over the whole land of Egypt, cause festering boils on man and beast throughout the land. So they took soot from a furnace and stood in the presence of Pharaoh. Moses scattered it toward the sky and caused boils on man and beast. The magicians could not stand in Pharaoh's presence, for there were boils on the magicians, no less than on the rest of the Egyptians. But the Lord made Pharaoh obstinate. He would not listen to them, just as the Lord had foretold to Moses. So more distinction, just them. Okay, just continue. Okay. Then the Lord told Moses, early tomorrow morning, present yourself to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, the God of Hebrews, let my people go to worship me, or this time I will hurl all my blows upon you and your servants and your subjects, that you may know that there is none like me anywhere on earth. For by now I would have stretched out my hand and struck you and your subjects with such pestilence as would wipe you from the earth. Okay, so there's my earlier question. Remember, why didn't God bring the big artillery out right from the start? So here God kind of makes reference to it, right? I could have gone nuclear right from the start. The explanation is, but this is why I spared you, to show you my power, and to make my name resound throughout the earth. How about that? So he wants, so this is like God wanting everybody, all human beings, to know him, to praise him, and to maybe even become a witness for him. So this is not, it's kind of like, they say about God, our God, God's slow to anger, abounding in kindness. So all of this frustrating that Pharaoh is doing to God, not only God and Pharaoh, but Pharaoh frustrating God and not giving in, God doesn't go right for the big thing, the big guns. Okay? So will you still block the way for my people by refusing to let them go? I warn you, and tomorrow at this hour I will rain down such fierce hail as there has never been in Egypt from the day the nation was founded to the present. Therefore order all your livestock, whatever else you have in the open fields, to be brought to a place of safety. Whatever man or beast remains in the fields and is not brought to shelter shall die when the hail comes upon them. All right, now we got more distinctions going on here. All right, more separation. Look at this. Some of Pharaoh's servants feared the warning of the Lord and hurried their servants and livestock off to shelter. Others, however, did not take the warning of the Lord to heart and left their servants and livestock in the fields. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward the sky, that they may fall upon the entire land of Egypt, the man and beast, everything growing. When Moses stretched out his staff toward the sky, the Lord sent forth hail and peals of thunder, lightning flashed toward the earth, and the Lord rained down hail upon the land of Egypt. Lightning constantly flashed throughout the hail. Such fierce hail had never been seen in the land since Egypt became a nation. Struck down every man and beast that was in the open throughout the land of Egypt. It beat down every growing thing, splintered every tree in the fields. Only in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites dwell, was there no hail. And Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said to them, I have sinned again. Really? The Lord is just, and it is I and my subjects who are at fault. Once again, now we got to change here, right? We're going like, okay, he's coming around. He's going like, I'm a sinner. Wow. Pray the Lord, for we have had enough of God's thunder and hail. Then I will let you go. You need stay no longer. Moses replied, as soon as I leave the city, I will extend my hand to the Lord. The thunder will cease, there will be no more hail. Thus you shall learn that the earth is the Lord's. But you and your servants, I know, do not yet fear the Lord God. Now the flax and the barley were ruined, because the barley was in ear and the flax in bud. But the wheat and the spelt were not ruined, for they grow later. Once again, we're going to survive this. It was awful, but it's all right. We still got, what do we got? Wheat and spelt. So we're good. We're okay. When Moses had left Pharaoh's presence and had gone out to the city, he extended his hands to the Lord, and the thunder and hail ceased, and the rain no longer poured down on the earth. But Pharaoh, seeing that the rain and hail and thunder had ceased, sinned again. He and his servants became obdurate, and in his obstinacy he would not let the Israelites go, as the Lord had foretold through Moses. Wow. What do you think? We've got dialogue, but no communication. What we have here is a failure to communicate. Is that right? Famous line. But yet, some communication is going on. Some words are being said. The right words are being said, but nothing really genuine, nothing real. But yet he's like, there's cracks. There's cracks in the armor, chinks in the armor. Okay, any thoughts you guys had?
Can I jump the gun as far as why we're doing this dissecting of the Old Testament and Exodus, because you want us to see the same thing happen in Revelation?
Yes.
Because that keeps going through my mind, and it's stopping me from being open to what's going on, because I keep thinking that we should be listening to what's going on, because we're going to do the same thing in Revelation.
You said we should be listening?
Well, it's keeping me from listening totally to what's going on here, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking we're going to do the same thing, watching how this whole progression goes in Revelation, as it's happening in the Old Testament.
Okay, all right, so Ken called it jump the gun, so you want me to jump to the punchline?
I don't know, it's just like it's just blocking me from...
Okay, so let me jump to the punchline, and maybe that will help. What we're seeing here is this separation being played out in very clear terms, right? Because distinctions were made where the plagues took place, or, you know, who was affected by it, obviously. We're seeing this played out, and even Pharaoh is acknowledging it, that it was happening. It didn't change his mind. All right, when we get to, so this is being played out historically and politically, and it's clear, right? Everybody can see it. Even though Pharaoh wasn't getting the message he was supposed to about it, he wasn't denying that it was happening, and the magicians are acknowledging that it's happening and it's real, and that God is, the finger of God is here. They said that play 3, right? What we have going on in Revelation is we have the same separation, meaning there is God's people, but it's not so clear. Because, so one of the, okay, maybe we just jump down the bottom of the page there. Now another distinction. See where I have that there? So, chapter 15. So this is after the Red Sea. Okay, so Pharaoh had the death of the firstborn, the 10th plague took place. Pharaoh finally gave up and said, go. They leave. They're on their way. They're at the Red Sea. Pharaoh becomes even more raged, full of enraged, and he decides to bring his chariots. He's going to kill them. So then the Red Sea takes place, which you know about, okay? Right after that, I think it's the first line of chapter 15. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. The Lord is gloriously triumphant, horse and chariot cast into the sea. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, it's a long 15, 16, 17 verse song of victory. Ken, it was a song of victory. A political victory for a fledgling nation against a more powerful nation. It's a political victory. Now, that, in contrast to the victory song of Revelation, songs, because there's lots of different ones, lots of encouragement that the victor I will give the gifts, the victory has been won, the Lamb once slain dies no more. All of this is Revelation victory language, or I just kind of quoted this one from chapter 12, one of the more famous ones. Now salvation and power come, the kingdom of our God, the authority of his anointed one. For the accuser of our brothers is cast out, who accuses them night and day before our God. They conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Love for life did not deter them from death. Rejoice, you heavens, and you that dwell therein. Here's the victory song of Revelation. What's the problem? What's the distinction?
It's not a political song.
It's not a political victory song. It's a song marking deaths of martyrs, or Christians who had to fight for their faith against certain other kinds of persecution. Got the idea, Ken? Yeah. So, in other words, the Christian song of victory, or Revelation's song of victory, is modeled on Christ's victory on the cross, which is to say, it's going to have all the earmarks of weakness, defeat, and disgrace. And so, then Revelation, but the reason I wanted to do this so much today, I know it's taking time, I wanted to do this is to really kind of like cement in your mind and heart the distinction between God's people and those who are fighting God. Because that is in the book of Revelation. But yet, so in the world we live, so back to my original image here, now the world we live, are things, what is it like? Is it like a bright sunny day? Is it like a gray day where there's no contrasts and everything's gray and dark and depressing? Or is it like the third image, like the one I started with? What's our world like right now, as far as you can tell? What's the feel you're getting? You got these three choices. Is it like the day where there are a lot of dark, ominous clouds, and yet there seems to be like this light shining through? What does it feel like? And this is the key question, because what it can feel like when you're a Christian on the receiving end of all of this is it's the dark, cloudy day. And there is no sun shining through, and I haven't seen the sun in 3 weeks, and it's raining, and I don't know when this is going to end, because it's just dark. Does it feel like that? See where I'm getting at? So what would you say?
It feels
What does it feel like to you?
pretty dark.
Like one of those days?
Not with the sun shining through.
Okay?
I agree.
We have two. She agrees. Other votes? Cast your vote. Sandy will turn the camera off if you don't want to vote. Put the camera up here, because it may be used against you one day in a court of law. What does it feel like?
For me, it's not total darkness. It's both. And I think you have, if you consciously work at seeing the light or seeing pieces of light, then the darkness doesn't totally overtake you.
Okay.
I think a lot of days it starts out very sunny, very bright, and as the day goes on, it turns into that grayness.
That's because you're watching the news, right? That's because you don't start out your morning and breakfast with the news, right? You're good. Because like you get up, the sun's shining, it's like a new day, and then
Yep.
I'm being facetious, but is that some truth?
I think that that's a very true statement, if you can stay away from that. But I also, sometimes the darkness gets big because if you get in a conversation with somebody or whatever, you don't, you walk very gingerly to express your views as a Catholic, because you know that it's very easily going to be attacked.
Okay.
Or you don't express it.
Well, express it right. So then, in other words, what's happening then it's like the gray day where things are vague. It's not clear.
But then when you're in the grocery store and you say something, and the lady, I was in the grocery store and I made a comment, and the lady at the cash register, she looked to the left and the right, and she started whispering, I totally agree. We had to whisper, but I thought that's one of those beams of light that there's a lot of them out there. It seems dark, but I think there's still a lot of hope, And the fact that, I just thought about coming into Mass on Sunday. We can still come into Mass openly. Still, right now, that's some of that sunlight coming in, but it does feel very dark, but some breakthroughs when you know that you're not alone.
Right. So, if you learn nothing else from all these classes, this is the book of Revelation. It's trying to get you to look at that third day that I was talking about at the beginning. That's what the book of Revelation is about. It's going to make the dark darker, and the light more glorious.
And if we didn't do what we did in Exodus, it would be very difficult to see.
If we did what?
We didn't go into Exodus today, it would be very difficult to see if we would have stayed in Revelation.
Okay, yeah, and that's why, thank you, Ken, that's why I thought, Jeremy, you heard what he said? He said if we hadn't done this tonight, it would be a little bit harder to see if we stayed in Revelation. And that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to do it, because it makes this separation that God is doing with his people even more clear in the face of the powerful political force that they were up against, where they had no, there's no military power at all. That's what's even most miraculous about the whole Exodus story. What was the powerful thing? A shepherd's staff. A shepherd's staff. This was the sword. No violence. And the only harsh things that took place were because Pharaoh said, won't do this. Won't let you go. So in many ways, it brought it on itself, which is some of the things that the commentators say, that these plagues that come upon the earth, it's things that the earth has brought upon itself by just like closing itself off to God. But in any case, like I said, my main point is that what Revelation wants is trying to present to us is like this day where it's very cloudy, very dark, and yet we get to see those lights come through where it feels like God is here on earth, and you can connect with that. So that you're not in La La Land, it's all going to be bright and it's all fine, and you're not, it's gray and dark and differentiated and just trying to hunker down and stay out of the, So I don't know, does it help? Because this kind of image, just like I said, just came to my mind. That this is what the book is about. Yes?
I just want to share that with Bill and I coming to Mass every morning, that really helps the positive.
All right.
It helps us to live through the darkness to the light, and Mass is the key.
Right, but I kind of think as Manette was saying, so it is asking effort on our part, and that's maybe the good thing about the fact that there is all this resistance out there right now. That's what I'm hoping, that is provoking more of a fighting spirit in people. It's just a whole question of what form is the resistance going to take, the fight inside of each person, But it should be doing that, I think, because you just can't be complacent. If you be complacent, you're just going to get swept away by the way this is going. Because you can see even like the whole COVID thing. Somebody was telling me the other day that there's places, I guess, in Europe, no churches are still not open. Some countries in Europe. Did you hear this? Yeah. You believe that? So yet people can go to stores and things like this, but they won't let them go to church. They weren't going to church that much anyway to begin with. But still, just the fact that they can get away with this, this is got to be part of it. The plan was to separate people from their faith.
Oh yeah, that's the evil.
Good question or point.
Made me think of funerals and death, and we've got friends that have no religious foundation, and if a parent dies, it's all gray and dark and there's no light. And when we go through it, it's dark and you feel horrible.
Right.
And yet there is that light, and knowing that there's a higher place that we're going.
No, that's a good example, Bill. Again, example of a funeral. Then you have the contrasts there, because it's like we have grief, human grief as Christians, and yet there is some light that's shining in the midst of the darkness, as opposed to things just being all bright.
Yeah, I think that some of those examples that you would say are light to me are darkness. It means that the fact that somebody has to whisper something in public, they're afraid of being fired for what they say, or that Canadian Canadian pastors are being arrested.
Yeah,
Like
there's
SWAT
stories in England and Canada now.
just because they had too many
Right.
people in the church.
Yeah,
And the fact that everybody just takes it and doesn't push back means to me that we're this close from just, everything is arrayed against us.
right,
The government, the technology,
right,
the entertainment industry,
right.
the academia, everything is against us.
Mhm.
And I just think that there's very little hope.
Well, this is why you're here at the book of Revelation,
Yeah.
because that's what the book is about, is like to not lose hope, and God is in control, and when it's most dark, it's when God.
That would be great if I come out the other end of the back.
Okay, no, that's what this is about. That was kind of like my original intuition about why I wanted to do this book, because I could feel things are getting pushed. They're really getting pushed. It wasn't because I think the world's going to end. It wasn't that. I told you that. It was because things are getting pushed. The same kind of things are happening where this persecution is taking place in subtle and now not so subtle ways.
There's
Yeah.
kind of this is radical, but also kind of a parallel, because like you said, the Jewish people in Exodus had forgotten it, kind of gotten complacent, kind of gotten lazy about God maybe. And then they wound up in this bad situation. So maybe is that kind of a parallel revelation?
Yeah,
The timeless
that's
thing of
good.
today, we were maybe a little complacent, we let a little things
Right.
relax, and
Mhm.
now we're like in the pits making the bricks
Yeah.
now,
Yeah, right.
Well, it's how
Yeah, well, it fits.
when you go through hardship, it reattaches you to God. Now you say, well, what's real? What's important? My real strength in this world is not all these other things that you
Right.
can't really count on. It's the Lord, and it's like a turning back to God, like the Israelites did so many times because they were punished. They
Right.
turned back, they went away, they get punished again, they turned back.
Mhm.
So I think you're right. This is like this whole situation is forcing us to
Right.
reevaluate what's important.
Mhm. Yeah. So that's the basic thing, is to just connect with that day. I mean, those are my favorite days, actually. Those days, where the clouds are like that and the light is coming through. Different days of contrast. I mean, I like these days too, but obviously, but.
It looks powerful too when you look at it.
Yeah,
You've
it's
got
powerful,
this
right.
glow breaking through the clouds. That's why.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, I think we can stop there. So the things I have on the other side, I'm going to go a little bit different direction and more like kind of the way our discussion is finishing up tonight. It's going to flow right from that to things I wanted to go next. So we'll finish up the plays real quick and then do that next time. So I think we'll meet in 2 weeks from tonight.
Yep.
Sounds good? Okay, thanks everybody.
Okay.
And may God bless all of you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son,